We've been, of course, watching the event today. Dr Ongama Mtimka is a political analyst based in Gqeberha. Dr Mtimka, good afternoon to you. It's an election year. January 8th statement in an election year, you would think, would look at things that are going to win votes. Are there any indications of real changes in ANC policy? To go through the document, it looks almost as if it's very similar to what we've seen in the past.
Good afternoon to you and your viewers, Stephen. So I think the message that looks at the 30-year span of the democratic period was dictated by the political environment that this event is taking place in. The campaign that opposition parties are taking to this upcoming election is one of a democratic period in which the people of South Africa didn't get as much as they could have. So as a matter of necessity, the president's speech, it drew a lot in terms of emphasizing what are some of the successes of the democratic government. It was quite interesting for me. There are things which, when I was thinking about what he could draw from when he does that, that I didn't think about. So, for example, we've come to accept as second nature the regulatory and policy environment for labor, you know, in terms of the regulations that are there. We've come to accept minimum wage as second nature, as well as, I think, the institutional architecture of our democracy. So it was good to get a reminder that it is precisely a result of democracy that we have these provisions which actually shape the political environment in which we operate in. But I also thought that the president would balance the speech, as you say, with a futuristic, strong, futuristic focus, drawing on successes of recent years' initiatives. Yes, I noted the successes about the economy, about healthcare, among other things, but one would have appreciated what would the end of this year look like as far as NHI was concerned? What would the end of this year look like as far as education was concerned? And there were as well as a few other things. Even as I acknowledge that the president did speak to those issues, but citing the general data from 1994 and how things have changed.
Do you think this is going to work with voters, a reminder of what the ANC has done over 30 years, rather than this is what you can expect the ANC to do in the next 5 years? The lived reality of so many people is, yes, we have...
You were saying, do I think?
So the question is, do you think the message of this is what the ANC has done for you over 30 years is going to work, as opposed to a message of this is what the ANC will do for you in the next 5 years?
Well, precisely because the electoral campaigns of political parties are painting a very gloomy picture of the past 30 years. It's important for the ANC to drive a message about how what its view of that 30 years has been. But you're quite right. A South African that is excited about a government that drove an exciting electrification program in the 90s to early 2000 to late 2000s is no longer concerned about access. They are concerned about security of availability, security of supply, both at work and at home, as well as guarantees about how the situation is going to improve going forward. A South African that's been connected to water and has been grateful for those connections is no longer at the level of celebrating access. It's now they are now interested in quality of access and security of supply. So indeed, we do need the ANC to focus a lot more going forward on what it is going to do to change the dire straits that South Africans are confronting, even with those services that they were excited to be connected to as a result of the democratic period.
There was a political development this morning around Dr Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Minister for Women, Children and People Living with Disabilities in the Presidency. A leaked letter she's written to the ANC's Elections Committee saying that she is not available for deployment to Parliament after the next election. She intends to retire from Parliament. Do you see her as retiring from politics? She's been in cabinet, I think, longer than any other cabinet minister now. Or do you think maybe she's going to another organisation? I think you would know who I'm pointing to. Could she be going to MK, or do you think she's actually just retiring from politics?
I think that it's a good example that is being set here. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is not among those cabinet ministers that have had a terrible time in government. She's had some great successes in foreign affairs. She's had some great successes in home affairs. And then, obviously, we know that the portfolio that she's been in the presidency has really been one which, in Xhosa, we would call intambo yokufela mahashe, or where she was being managed politically. That notwithstanding, I think that it's a good example, and I think that whatever her intentions are, I hope that she inspires a lot more other people who've been there for 30 years to read the room. The country is no longer excited to have these politicians that did a really exciting job or honorable job of liberating the country, but they've run out of runway. There's no more space for them, I think, in the main business of government. There may still be role of senior advisory and good counsel somewhere, but I think South Africans need a breather now. Part of the mantra 2024 is our 1994 is not just about the state of affairs in the country, but the state of politics as embodied by this group that were liberation fighters.
That's such an interesting point. I mean, it's really about, will there be real change? I don't know if young people believe that the ANC can bring real change. Isn't that really the ANC's problem? More and more young people are allowed to vote, but I don't know if they've registered to vote. And if they are registered to vote, well, Julius Malema may be more attractive.
I think that the ANC has gone past that time where it has it has latitude of deciding changes based on how likely the public is going to respond. It's gotten to a stage where it has to do the right thing for its sake, and I think that it has to do the right thing and give space for the right thing to gain credibility among people. And I've written in more depth about this, where I'm arguing that the ANC needs to make changes that are radical, which are not going to be rewarded in this election, no matter how best it runs, it does this, because people are not going to suddenly forget their lived experiences. And then allow these to simmer and gain some momentum so that come 2029, 2034, it is able to actually enjoy the fruits of the good changes it needs to make. So I know I'm not answering your question directly, Stephen. The point I'm making is that it needs to make changes that are good for the sake of the goodness of those changes over a longer term period, and not how likely those changes can win them a favor in the short term. It's gone past that, and I think that, yes, some South Africans are made up in their minds, both young and old, that they're going to change their vote. Some of them are going to the EFF, some of them are going to go to the Democratic Alliance, some to the new kids on the block that are splinters of the DA, and yet others will go to the new kids that are starting from a clean slate like Rise Mzansi.
Dr. Ongama Mtimka, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate the time.